But when you look at the Song of Songs, you will find some interesting characters in that particular book. There's only 4 types of peoples in that Song of Songs. One is Solomon. Second is the woman from Shulam. And third is the brothers and sisters of the woman of the Shulam. And fourth is the daughters of Israel or Jerusalem. Those are the only 4 people that you will see in that book. That book is written such that it is like it's like a opera. So people coming on the stage and sings, and then they just go back, and then some other people comes out. So go in and out. But there are 2 main characters in that particular book. That is Solomon and the woman from Shulam. So let's take a quick look at it. When you turn to the Song of Solomon, it starts with like this: the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine, your anointing oils are fragrant. Your name is oil poured out, their virgin love you. Draw me after you, let us run. The king has brought me into his chambers. This particular book is a forbid for the Jewish people to read this particular book until they reach age 30. It's been forbidden. The reason was because when you read this book, there's a lot of the sexual word are used in this book. Yeah. So very intimate words are being used here, right? So this book is about the love between Solomon's and the woman of Shulam. So when you hear verse 5, this is a woman who sings, I'm very dark but lovely, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtain of Solomon's. Do not gaze at me because I'm dark, because the sun has looked upon me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me keeper of the vineyards, but my own vineyard I have not kept. Tell me, you whom my soul loves, where you pasture your flock, where you made it lie down at noon. For why should I be like one who veils herself beside the flocks of your companions? So this is the woman from Shulam is actually saying this. So she has a very dark skin. She's not black, but she was kind of like tanned because she was working in the vineyard for a long time. But she's dark. People are making fun of her. Why are you so dark? But she claimed herself, but I'm beautiful because Solomon calls me beautiful. So there's a woman. This is a love story between Solomon and the woman. Okay? But when you look at this Song of Solomon, this particular song was written when Solomon was young. Do you know how we know this book was written very early stage of Solomon? It says here in chapter 6. Chapter 6, we're going to read from verse 8. There are 60 queens and 80 concubines, and virgins without numbers. My dove, my perfect one, is the only one of her mother, pure to her who bore her. So, when you look at it, Solomon has how many queens? 60 queens. And he has 80 concubines. Okay? But how many kings did he have? How many queens did he have? He's got 700 wives and 300 concubines. 1,000. Can you imagine? I mean, I could barely handle one, not to mention two or like, hundreds or 1,000, right? Can you imagine like just sleeping with that woman, once? If you just sleep with one woman every day, it takes about like 3 years to see that woman again. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous, right? 1,000 women? Wow. I don't know how he managed it, but like he had 1,000 women. But according to this chapter 6, and what did he say? He says 60 queens and 80 concubines. To reach to the number 1,000 is still a long ahead, right? Which means, right? So this book was written early stage, okay? But the thing is, he's looking for a woman, and he fell in love with this woman of Shalom. But you know what? Shalom. Woman of Shalom, right? In Hebrew word, we always look for what it's called the sheresh. Sheresh means root word. Usually the root word is the one who actually distinguish what this where this word came from. But if you look at shalom, right? Shalom, it's the same thing. Shalom, shalom, came from the same root, same sheresh. What it means is, you can think of it as, it's a masculine noun. A peace is a shalom. Feminine noun is a shalom. So both means shalom. Both means peace. But this Shalami woman stays with Solomon and have a peace together. So when you look at it, when God created Adam, from Adam, God created a woman out of man, Adam. Right? And the first thing God did was bring the woman to Adam. And the first thing he said was, what did he say? When he brought the woman to Adam, what did God say? Let's take a look at chapter 2 from Genesis. Chapter 2 of Genesis. Verse 24. He says this: Therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother, and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Right? That's the first thing he said. What does that mean? Once again, let me repeat. God created Adam first, and took the rib from Adam and created a woman. So now one became two. But God brings that woman back to Adam and say, united as one. So that back to one again. One became two, and two became one. That's the concept. Meaning, shalom, shalami, the woman from the shalami, and then when they bring together, they make one piece. One became two, two became one. Jesus is the head of the church, right? We're the body, right? So we're one body. What God does is, it was one at the beginning, and it became two, that brings the woman back in and make it one piece. That's the concept. So when you look at the Bible, that's what God is saying. And John chapter 15 also said, what does he say? I'm in you, you are in me, will become one. Right? It's not a you and me anymore. It's just us. It's one. Become united. That's the concept the Bible is teaching us. So, Solomon got married to a daughter from Egyptian, which means the woman I kept saying in Old Testament represent Israel. Woman in the New Testament represent church. But when you look at it, Moses married to Israelite woman? No. He married to a pagan woman. Right? Joseph, did he marry to Israelite? He was also married to the daughters from the Egyptian priest. Right? Same thing. Solomon got married to a pagan woman. Same thing. That represent that ultimately Jesus will marry to the pagan woman, which is the church. Not Israel, but the church. We are the pagan. Right? So it's the same concept. So coming back to 1 King again. He took Pharaoh's daughters and brought her into the city of David until he had finished building his own house and the house of the Lord and the wall around Jerusalem. The people were sacrificing at the high place, however, because no house had yet been built for the name of the Lord. Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statues of David, his father. Only he sacrificed and made offering at the high places. Let's underline that particular word. The Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statue of David, his father. We'll come back to that one. And the king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for that was the great high place that Solomon used to offer 1,000 burnt offering on that altar. Now, where's the Gibeon? Where's the Gibeon? Do you know anything about Gibeon? Who are they? Where are they? And Joshua made it. Exactly. Right? Now, we talked about Gibeonites for many, many times in the past. Right? You should know this. Right? And they're the Amorites, descendants of Amorites, who were supposed to be wiped out, but was a spare because they want to live, right? And that's where Solomon went to worship the Lord, right? Not in the middle of Jerusalem, but he went to Gibeon to worship the Lord. And I would just keep telling you, they're always the pagan who actually, been brought to this to attention. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, "Ask what I shall give you." And Solomon said, "You have shown great and steadfast love to your servant David, my father, because he walked before you in faithfulness, in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart towards you." Once again, how did David walk? David walked before the Lord in faithfulness, in righteousness, and uprightness of a heart towards the Lord. This is the one that we need to have. Once again, what is it? In faithfulness, in righteousness, and in uprightness of a heart towards the Lord. And you have kept for him this great and steadfast love, and have given him a son to sit on his throne this day. He's talking about himself, right? Now on, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of David my father, although I am but a little child. Obviously, he's really not a child, right? He's adult. But he called himself a child because he called himself, I don't know anything, is what he is saying. I do not know how to go out or come in. And your servant is in the midst of your people, whom you have chosen, a great people, too many to be numbered of or accounted for multitude. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people. What did Solomon ask for? He's asking for understanding mind to govern his people. That I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to govern this, your great people? Right. What is he asking? Discern between good and evil. What does it remind you? Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve. Right? When the serpent actually came to Eve, what did the serpent say? Right, so let's go back to the Genesis again. We're going back to Genesis multiple times today, but chapter 3 from Genesis. Now the serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field that the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, did God actually say you shall not eat of any tree in the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, you may eat of the fruit of the tree in the garden, but God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, or lest you die. But the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. I asked this question multiple times, right? Knowing good and evil, is it a good thing or a bad thing? Knowing good and evil is bad? Yeah. So when I actually ask these questions to most of the people, that's the first time they start to thinking about it. Knowing good and evil is a really bad thing. For us, right? It's a good thing. You should know what is bad and what is good so that you follow what is right. One of the things is this. Think about this, okay? When we do good things, right? When we do good things, I want you to, I don't know if you have ever had a chance to really play with the little baby or little kids, right? If you ever play with them, you will find some interesting, you will see your child's behavior. When child is very young and have not known much, but the baby and the child actually lie, take things away from others, right? They do bad things. You don't have to teach the baby, you don't have to teach the kids how to do bad, because they will naturally do bad. But if you want the child to do good things, you have to continually teach them, remind them, share. Don't do this, don't lie. You have to teach them not to lie, not to do bad things. But bad things, if you let them just do whatever they want, they will do all kinds of bad things. What it means is that baby does not need to learn to do bad things. But in order for us to teach the kids to do right, we have to continually remind them and teach them how to do right. Okay? That tells us we're born as a sinner, because we're sinning because we're sinner, not because we sinned and became a sinner. We're born as a sinner, that's why we sin. So when you think about it, knowing good and evil, in our mind, we should know good and evil so that we can follow good instead of following evil. Right? But serpent wanted to give something bad to Eve and Adam. Knowing good and evil is bad. So this is the questions we always have to ask. Oh, he's a good guy. Oh, he's a bad guy. Right? When you say that, what is the actual line between good guy versus bad guy? Where's the line? So you have to have some sort of a guideline to tell, okay, if you go across this side to the left side, you're a bad guy. To the right side, you're a good guy. So there has to be some sort of a guideline that you determine what is bad and what is good. Right? Everybody has that. Unfortunately, that guideline is different from one person to another. The way I measure good and evil is different than the way you measured good and evil. Right? Historically, it's always been different. In the past, in old days, what they call to be good may not be good anymore today. Right? Historically, it's different. And not only that, country by country is different, and culturally it's different. You know, in this country, we call it, oh, that's good behavior. When you go to another country, that becomes a bad behavior, right? Because that's how they see it. So there's no definite and there's no absolute right and wrong and good and evil. Because that good and evil, that baseline, is keep changing over time. It's always, it's a variable. There's no fix, there's no absolute good and evil. Because every law is different. Every human is different. So the way we measure good and evil is always different. So, what did serpent wanted to give us? Serpent wanted to give us ability to see ourselves and measure things based on ourselves. What is good and what is evil? Which is the worst thing could happen. This is how it started. This is why we always try to fight with other people. I'm right, you're wrong. Isn't that what we fight for? We try to prove that I'm right and you're wrong. Right? We always try to do that because that's the behavior that we inherited from the days of Adam. We always want to prove that I'm right. What I'm doing is right. You're doing wrong. We teach our kids, I'm right, you're wrong. I will teach you, I'm right. That's behavior we inherited. But then, as I mentioned, knowing good and evil, supposed to be a good thing, but it became bad thing. How did it become good and evil? Think about this. I'm going to give you a very big challenge here. So, think about this for a moment. Is it killing good or bad? The killing is bad. It's bad, right? God tells Israelites to kill people. Right? God said, wipe out the Amalekite. Kill everyone. Old, young, man, woman, child, kill them all. Yeah. Now, we just said the killing is bad. Okay? When God says, wipe out the Amalekites, right? Kill all those people, right? Wipe out the Canaanites. Well, let me ask you this. Is this good? Is this good? Is this evil or is that a good? What is it? Well, now we're confused. Right? What we just called evil became good now because God so said. Right? Yeah, but still, we measure good and evil. We were talking about what is good and what is evil. Right? Killing is bad. It's evil. But when God says, wipe out remove the entire Canaanites, that's evil. Right? Then we can say, well, God is evil. Right? Well, here's the thing. What we call it as good and evil is based on what we measure as good and evil. Right? But you know what? When you read the Bible, here's something you need to keep in mind. We don't want to just get into debate on this one today, but eventually we will. All right? What God said is good. What God said us to do is good. What God said not to do is evil. But that's not how we measure things. Because based on my righteousness, based on my guideline, that's not how it works. When Adam did not take the fruit from the tree of knowledge, what God said do is good. What God said not to do is evil. But then when serpent came and said to the woman, no, you can still eat. You're not going to die. He doesn't like you to be like God, knowing good and evil. And the next thing was, now she ignored what God said. Do not eat from the fruit from this tree, but she ignored and she took the fruit and ate it. And let's go back to chapter 3 again and see what the Bible said. It said, verse 6, chapter 3, it says this. So, when the woman saw that the tree was good for food and that it was a delight to the eyes and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruits and ate. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. That tree was always been there. Always been there. They probably looked at, because it's in the middle of the garden, she saw these trees all the time. But she didn't really think of it this way. But soon after, serpent said, you can eat from this the fruit from this tree. And then all of a sudden, in her eyes, what did he say? Good for food and delight to the eyes, right? Desire to make one wise. Now, she started to think, it's okay for me to eat. It looks good. I should eat. Now she started to ignore what God said. So it's no longer what God said is good, and what God said not to do is evil, is no longer. She started to measure her own. She started to measure, it's okay for me to eat. So I can violate God's command and eat this. That's the failure, and that's exactly what evil wanted to give it to woman and Adam. And until today, and even our next generation and in generations after, they will continue to do so. We'll continue to measure good and evil based on my own righteousness. What I learned as right, and what I learn as good is good. What I learn as bad is bad. We're always going to measure the people and everything around us. We're always going to measure against my own righteousness, which is always varies. One day I think it's right. Next day I may think it is not right. It's always changing. If I measure against other people that I don't love, I could be very harsh. But if I actually measure people that I love, my guidelines shifts all the time. So it always varies. It is not absolute. So what Solomon asked was, Lord, give me the discernment that I can distinguish what is good and evil. Not based on what I think is right or wrong, but give me the discernment so that I can measure what is good and evil from your eyes. Give me that discernment. Give me that understanding. That's what he asked for. So almost restoring before woman actually, failed to follow God's command. Right? And come back to this, 1 King again. Verse 10, it pleases the Lord that Solomon had asked, because he was asking to restore himself, like before the time of Adam. And God said to him, because you have asked this, have not asked for yourself a long life or riches of the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right. Did he say understanding to discern what is right and wrong? Or did he say only understanding to discern what is right? Do you understand? Understanding to discern what is right. He didn't say what is right and wrong. He said understanding to discern what is right. What is right is following God's command. Behold, I now do according to your word. Behold, I give you a wise and discerning mind. So none like you has been before you, none like you shall arise after you. So I want you to think about it. God gave everything to Adam. I gave you this garden. You rule this, right? Right? He gave everything to Adam. Before, he actually sinned against the God. And then the next thing is he was expelled from the Garden of Eden. Let's reverse this. When Solomon asked, give me the discernment, right? Give me the discernment so that I distinguish good and evil. So I want you to reverse this. Going back before Adam and before woman has sinned, they had everything. So when Solomon asked, please give me the discernment and understanding so that I can distinguish good and evil, and God said, I'll give you everything. You could think of it as the same order. God gave everything. Adam and Eve failed. They lost everything. But he was doing the reverse. Give me the discernment, what is right and wrong, and then God gave everything. It's a reverse order. Just like God gave everything to Adam and the woman. Continue on. Verse 14. And if you will walk in my ways, here's the word that you need to circle. If. This is the key word. If. To circle that. If you will walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your days. That key word is if. If means it's a condition. If you do this, this is a condition. This is very, very important. Please just remember this word, if, because this will become so important to you. And Solomon awoke, and behold, it was a dream. Then he came to Jerusalem and stood before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and offered up burnt offering and peace offering, and made a feast for all his servants. Then 2 prostitutes came to the kings and stood before him. The one woman said, O Lord, O my Lord, this woman and I live in the same house that I gave birth to a child while she was in the house. Then on the 3rd day after I gave birth, the woman also gave birth, as we were alone. There was no one else with us in the house, only we 2 were in the house. And this woman's son died in the night because she laid on him. And she rose at midnight and took my son from beside me, while your servant slept, and lay him at her breast, and lay her dead son at my breast. When I rose in the morning to nurse my child, behold, he was dead. But when I looked at him closely in the morning, behold, he was not the child that I had borne. But the other woman said, No, the living child is mine, and the dead child is yours. The first said, No, the dead child is yours, and the living child is mine, though they spoke before the king. The king said, The one says, This is my son, that is alive, and your son is dead. And the other says, No, but your son is dead, and my son is a living one. And the king said, Bring me a sword. So the sword was brought before the king. And the king said, Divide the living child in two, and give half of the ones and half to the other. Then a woman whose son was alive said to the king, because her heart yearned for her sons, Oh, my lord, give her the living child. By no means put him to death. But the other said, He shall be neither mine or yours. Divide him. Then the king answered and said, Give the living child to the first woman, and by no means put him to death, as she is his mother. And Israel heard of the judgment that the king had rendered, and they stood in awe of the king, because they perceived that the wisdom of God was in him to do justice. And everyone knows this story. It's a very simple story, right? But there's one thing that you have to keep in mind. When God asked Abraham, I want you to give your one and only son to me as the offering, right? What did Abraham do? He had to travel 3 days. He had to travel to 3 days to go to the Mount Moriah. And he was about to kill his son with the sword, right? About to cut his son. When he did that, God said, Abraham, Abraham. And he stopped him to cut his son into pieces. And what did God say? Let's go back. Go back to Genesis again. It's a chapter 22. Genesis chapter 22, we're going to read from verse 1. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. He said, Take your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took two of his young men with him, and his son Isaac, and he cut the wood for the burnt offering, and rose and went to the place of which God had told him. On the third day Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. Then Abraham said to his young men, Stay here with the donkey. I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again to you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son, and he took in his hand and fire and knife. So they went, both of them together, and Isaac said to his father Abraham, My father. And he said, Here I am, my son. He said, Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham said, God will provide for himself if the lamb for a burnt offering, my son. So they went, both of them together. When they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built the altar there and laid the wood in the order, and both Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. But the angel of the Lord called him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. He said, Do not lay your hands on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the name of that place, The Lord will provide, as it is said to this day, On the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. When did God say, I know your heart now? When Abraham was about to cut his son in half. Then God said, I knew you're willing to give your son, your beloved son, Isaac. Right? Now, let's just turn to 1 King again. There's the two women. Right? They both claim the living child is their child. So what did Solomon do? Bring the knife. Right? Cut this baby in half. And soon as he ordered to cut this baby in half, the woman of true, the true mother said, No! Don't cut it. Don't cut the child into two and half. Give this child to the other woman, because she was a true mother. When they're about to cut this baby in half, they knew which one was the right one, which one was the truly loved one. Right? When they're trying to cut these two, the baby in half. Right? Once again, let's think about this. When Jesus died on the cross, right? When Jesus died on the cross, what happened right after that? When Jesus died on the cross, what happened? Veil was torn, and from the top to bottom. Right? The veil was torn from top to bottom. And in Book of Hebrews says what? That veil was the body of Christ. Which means he was cut in half on the cross. When he cut himself on the cross, everyone knew he was the actually true Christ. When we split it into half, we will know which one. Same thing. When Israelites crossing the Red Sea, what did God do? Split the river. Right? Split the sea, the Red Sea, and split it in half. Then they crossed. When they're in the desert, how did the water coming out from the rock? Split it in half. Split it in half. Rock has to be splitted to bring the living water for people to drink. What does that tell you? That is representation of the death of Jesus Christ to bring the living water to us. When the Red Sea is split in half, they can walk through that, which is the living path. Right? The splitting half is actually telling us to know who is the right one. Who will be the saved one? Who will be the true mother? I want to show you something interesting. As a matter of fact, I want to show you today some Chinese character, which Daisy might appreciate it, but I'll show you some interesting things here. Let me see if I can bring my screen here. Let's see. Where did I put this? Hang on 1 second. Solomon's wisdom was distinguish who's the true mother and who's the true believer, right? Knowing what is good and evil. So he was able to actually distinguish. what's good and what is evil. Let's come back to this. King Solomon was a king over all Israel, and these were his high official. Azariah the son of Zadok was the priest. Elihorab and Ahijah the son of Shisha were secretaries. Jehoshaphat was the son of Ahilud was recorder. Benaiah the son of Jehoiada was the command of the army. Zadok and Abiathar were priests. Azariah the son of Nathan was over the officer. Zabub the son of Nathan was priest and king's friend. Ahishar was in charge of the palace, and Adoniram the son of Abba was in charge of a forced labor. Solomon had 12 officers over all Israel who provided food for the king and his household. Each man had to make provision for 1 month in a year. These were his name: Ben-Hur, and the hill country of Ephraim. Ben-Decker in Makaz, Shalbim, Beth Shemesh, and Elon Beth Hanan. Ben-Hesed in Aruboth. To him belonged to Sukkot and all the land of Hepher. Ben Abinadab in all Naptath Dor. He had Taphath and daughter of Solomon as his wife. So as you can see, Solomon is not a young child, right? Why? Because he has a daughter. Banah the son of Ahildu in Tanakh, Megiddo, and all Beth Shen, that is beside Jerathan, below Jezreel, and from Beth Shean to Abel Meholah, as far as the other side of Jokmeam. Ben Geber in Ramoth Gilead, he had the villages of Jair, the son of Manasseh, which are the Gilead, and he had the region of Argob, which is Bashan, 60 great cities with walls with bronze bar. Abinadab the son of Ido, Mahanaim, Ahimaaz in Naphtali, he had taken Basemath and daughters of Solomon as his wife. Bana the son of Hushai in Esher and Bealoth. Jehoshaphat the son of Paruah in Iskar. Shimei the son of Elah in Benjamin. Gerber the son of Uri in the land of Gilead, the country of Shihon king of the Amorites, and of Og king of Bashan, and there was one governor who was over the land. Judah and Israel were as many as the sand by the sea. They ate and drank and were happy. Solomon ruled over all the kingdom from the Euphrates to the land of Philistines and the border of Egypt. They brought tribute and served to Solomon all the days of his life. Solomon's provision for one day was 30 kor of fine flour and 60 kor of meal, 10 fat oxen and 20 pasture-fat cattle and 100 sheep, and besides a deer, gazelles, rosebuck, and fattened fowl. For he had a dominion over all the regions west of the Euphrates, from the Tipshah to Gaza, over all the kings west of the Euphrates, and all he had a peace on all sides around him. And Judah and Israel lived in safety from Dan even to Beersheba, every man under his vine and under his fig tree, all the days of Solomon. Solomon also had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots and 12,000 horsemen. And those officials supplied a provision for King Solomon and for all who came to King Solomon's table, each one in his mouth. They let nothing be lacking. Barley also had the straw for the horses and swift steeds. They brought to the palace where it was required, each according to his duty. And God gave to Solomon wisdom and understanding beyond measure, and breadth of mind like the sand on the seashore. So that Solomon's wisdom surpassed the wisdom of all the people of the east and all the wisdom of Egypt. For he was wiser than all other men, wiser than Ethan and Ezrahite, and Heman, Calcol, and Darda, the sons of Mahol, and his fame was in all the surrounding nations. He also spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. He spoke of tree from the cedar that is in Lebanon to hyssop that grows out of the walls. He spoke also of beasts and of birds and of reptiles and of fish. And people of all nations came to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and from all the kings of the earth who had heard of his wisdom. So, throughout his life journey, he wrote a lot of proverbs and so many songs. How many songs do we know of his out of all this? He wrote 3,000 proverbs and he wrote 1,005 songs. How many songs do we know of his? What's not a lot? Out of 1,005. So he wrote, out of all this, we only know 2 songs in the Bible. There's only 2 songs. Let's just take a quick look at it. Psalm. Psalm 127. Psalm 127. It says, a song of ascents of a Solomon's. Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. It is in vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for he gives his beloved asleep. Behold, the children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies in the gates. This is the only songs that we know in the book of Psalms. And there's actually one more. We'll just take a quick look at that one too. Let's turn to Psalm chapter 72. Psalm chapter 72. When you look at Psalm chapter 72, it starts with of Solomon, right? But let's take a look at the end of this psalm. Psalm chapter 72, verse 20. The prayers of David, the son of Jesse, are ended. So whose a song is this? Is that Solomon? Or is it a David? It is the David's. So it's not really Solomon. So this is not the Solomon of the Psalms. So only songs that we know, only 2 in the Bible. Psalm 127, which we just read, right? 172 is 127 shows what? Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. So no matter how you build your house, if God does not build the house, it's nothing. It's meaningless. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. So no matter you stayed up all night and keeping the watch of the tower is meaningless. Unless Lord watches over the city. So what's really important is you are building the house, you're watching over the tower, but God has to do it for you. It's not you doing this, but God has to do it. That's the key word. That's what Solomon learned. It is not me who's ruling over this country. It's not me who's judging all this. It's not me doing this and that. It is the Lord. If Lord is not doing it, it's meaningless. That's what he learned. And the other song is Song of Solomon, which is what I just introduced to you before. So what does that Song of Solomon means? Song of Solomon means it's a love between Solomon and the woman of Shulamit, which means is the story between Jesus and the church. That's the story of the Song of Solomon. So out of all this actually Psalms he wrote, out of 1,005 we only know 2. How many Proverbs do we know? Well, obviously Proverbs, it was written by Solomon, right? So how many chapters do we have? 31, right? There's only 31. This is why many people is encouraged to read this, the Proverbs in a month, right? Because it's 31 chapter, right? One chapter a day. So we only know 31 Proverbs out of how many? 3,000? Out of 3,000, we only know 31. So we have like 1% of what he wrote, literally. All right, let's continue on. Chapter 5. Now, Hiram king of Tyre sent his servant to Solomon when he heard that they had anointed him king in place of his father, for Hiram always loved David. And Solomon sent word to Hiram, "You know that David, my father, could not build a house for the name of the Lord his God because of the warfare with which his enemies surrounded him, until the Lord had put him under the soles of his feet. But now the Lord my God has given my rest on every side, and there is neither adversity nor misfortune." Remember I showed you before? All this adversity and misfortune was actually done and over with David. And only thing Solomon inherited is just the peace. "And so I intended to build a house for the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord said to David my father, your son, whom I will set on my throne, set on your throne in your place, you shall build a house for my name. Now therefore command that cedar of Lebanon be cut for me, and my servant will join your servant. I will pay you for your servant such wages you set, for you know that there is no one among us who knows how to cut timber like the Sidonians." As soon as the Hiram heard the word of Solomon, he rejoiced greatly and said, "Blessed be the Lord this day, who has given to David his wise son to be over this great people." And Hiram sent to Solomon, saying, "I have heard the message that you have sent to me. I am ready to do all you desired in the matters of cedar and cypress timber. My servant shall bring down to the sea from Lebanon, and I will make it into a raft to go by the seas to the place you direct, and I will have them broken up there, and you shall receive it. And you shall meet my wishes by providing food for my household." So Hiram supplied to Solomon with all the timbers, the cedar and cypress that he desired, while Solomon gave Hiram 20,000 core of wheat as the food and for his household, and 20,000 core for the beaten oils. Solomon gave this to Hiram ear by ear. And the Lord gave Solomon wisdom, as he promised to him. And there was a peace between Hiram and Solomon, and two of them made a treaty. King Solomon drafted forced labor out of all Israel, and drafted number 30,000 men, and he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month in shift. They would be
a month in Lebanon and 2 months at home. Adoniram was in charge of the draft. Solomon also had 70,000 burden bearers and 80,000 stone cutters in the hill country. Besides Solomon, 3,300 chief officers who were over the work, who had a charge of the people who carried on the work. And the king commanded they carried out great, costly stone in order to lay the foundations of the house with dressed stone. So Solomon builders, Hiram builders, and the man of Gebar did the cutting and prepared the timber and the stones to build the house. Continue on. In the 480th year after the people of Israel came out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon reigned over Israel, in the month of Ziv, which is the second month, he began to build the house of the Lord. The house that King Solomon built for the Lord was 60 cubits long and 20 cubits wide and 30 cubits high. The vestibules in front of the nave of the house was 20 cubits long, equal to the width of the house, and 10 cubits deep in the front of the house. And he made for the house window with recessed frame. He also built a structure against the wall of the house, running around the walls of the house, both the nave and inner sanctuary, and he made aside a chamber of all around. Lowest story was 5 cubits broad, and middle one was 6 cubits broad, and the third was 7 cubits broad. For around the outside of the house he made offset on the wall in order that the supporting beams should not be inserted into the wall of the house. When the house was built, it was with the stone prepared at the quarry, so that neither hammer nor axes nor any tools of iron was heard in the house while it was being built. The entrance for the lowest story was on the south side of the house, and one went up by stairs to the middle story, and from the middle story to the third. So he built the house and finished it, and he made the ceilings of the house of beams and plank of cedar. He built the structure against the whole house 5 cubits high, and it was joined to the house with timbers of cedar. Now the word of the Lord came to Solomon concerning this house that you are building. If you will, once again, what is it? If. So circle that. If. You will walk in my statute and obey my rules and keep all my commandments and walk in them, then I will establish my word with you, which I spoke to David your father. And I will dwell among the children of Israel, and will not forsake my people Israel. So Solomon built the house and finished it. He lined the wall of the house on the inside the boards of the cedar from the floor of the house to the walls of the ceilings. He covered them on the side inside with wood, and he covered the floor of the house with board of a cypress. He built 20 cubits of the rear of the house with the board of a cedar from the floor to the walls, and he built this within as an inner sanctuary, as the most holy place. The house that is nigh in front of the inner sanctuary was 40 cubits long, and the cedar within the house was carved in the form of gourd and open flowers, and all was a cedar, no stones was seen. Inner sanctuary he prepared in the innermost part of the house, and set there ark of the covenant of the Lord. The inner sanctuary was 20 cubits long, and 20 cubits wide, and 20 cubits high, and he overlaid it with pure gold. He also overlaid an altar of cedar. The Solomon overlaid the inside of the house with pure gold, and he drew chains of gold across in front of the inner sanctuary and overlaid it with gold. And he overlaid the whole house with gold until all house was finished. Also the whole altar that belonged to the inner sanctuary he overlaid it with gold. In the inner sanctuary he made 2 cherubim of olive wood, each 10 cubits high. 5 cubits was the length of one wings of the cherub, and the 5 cubits the length of the other wings of the cherub. It was the 10 cubits from the tip of the one wings to the tip of the others. The other cherub also measured 10 cubits. Both the cherubim had the same measure and the same form. The height of one cherub was 10 cubits, and so was that of the other cherub. He put the cherubim in the innermost part of the house, and the wings of the cherubim were spread out so that the wing of one touched the one on one wall, and the wing of the other cherub touched the other wall. Their other wings touched each other in the middle of the house, and he overlaid the cherubim with gold. Around all the walls of the house he carved engraved figures of cherubim and palm tree and open flowers in the inner and outer room. The floor of the house he overlaid with gold in the inner and outer room. For the entrance to the inner sanctuary he made doors of olive wood and lintel, and the doorpost was five-sided. He covered 2 doors of olive wood with carving of cherubim, palm trees, and other flowers. He overlaid them with gold and spread a gold on the cherubim and on the palm tree. So also he made for the entrance to the nave doorpost of olive wood in the form of a square, and 2 doors of a cypress wood. The 2 leaves of the one door were folding, and 2 leaves of the other door were folding. On them he carved the cherubim and palm tree and open flowers, and he overlaid them with the gold evenly applied on the carved work. He built the inner court with 3 courses of cut stones and 1 course of cedar beams. In the 4th year the foundations of the house of the Lord was laid in the month of Ziv, and in the 11th year, in the month of Bul, which is the 8th month, the house was finished in all its part, and according to all its specifications. He was 7 years in building it. Okay. While we're reading it, can you imagine what it looks like? Does it actually I see, okay, looks like this, that looks like that. It's coming to your head? Or as I was reading, it's like, what am I reading? It's like you have no idea what you're reading. You have no idea what he's talking about. Right? Okay. Here's the thing. Imagine, I think I gave this examples before. Imagine, whatever room you're in, right? Wherever room you're in, look around. You see all the stuff in your room. Like there's bookshelf, there's desk, and there's lamp, and there's windows, there's doors, the bunch of the stuff in your room. And each people's room is different, right? And if I ask you, whatever you see, with your eyes in your room, if I ask you, describe exactly what you see in your room in word. Right, you see things. You see the doors and windows, and in the middle there's desks, there's lamp, there's this furniture, that furniture, chairs, and all that good stuff. If you describe in word, and if you actually give that to someone else, right, and then ask that person, "Can you see my room?" Would it be easy? It would be very difficult, because you understand and you see what you see, but if you're actually writing in word and give it to someone else to imagine what your room looks like, it's very difficult. Some may understand. Most of the people don't imagine what your room looked like just by reading what you wrote. It's very difficult. I wish God actually gave Moses the picture rather than a word, right? And then simply put the pictures in the Bible. Right? Stamp it. It would be a lot easier for us to understand it, but that's not how it is written. Unfortunately, everything what he saw was written in word. This makes it very difficult for us to figure things out. So, we're going to take a look at what this is. I only have a few pictures, so you have to kind of follow it through. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if you see my screen. Everyone see my screen? Okay, good. So I'm going to slowly explain this again. Let's go back to the book again. All right. Chapter 6, verse 2. Let's read, and then I'll explain. The house that King Solomon built for the Lord was 60 cubits long and 20 cubits wide and 30 cubits high. So let me explain what that means. Blow this up. Okay, so the first part here in this room is a Holy of Holy. Okay? And this is naive, and this is vestibule. Okay? So it says, what did he say? He says, Solomon built for the house was 60 cubits. So this is it. This is 20 cubits. From here to here is 20 cubits. All right? 60 cubits. So this is 20 and this is 40. So that makes a total of 60 cubits from here to here. So this is the Holy of Holy, and this is holy place. So total between the holy place and the Holy of Holy is 60 cubits from here all the way to here. Not including the vestibule, from here all the way to here is 60 cubits. That makes sense? All right? And 30 cubits, let me see. 60 cubits long and 20 cubit wide. 20 cubit wide, this is the 20 cubit wide. So from here to all the way here is 60 cubits and 20 cubits wide. Okay? And 30 cubits from here in the floor to the ceiling is 30 cubits. You get that? Once again, from here to here is 60 cubits, 20 cubit wide. From the floor to the ceiling is 30 cubits. Now you get that, right? Now you can see what they're talking about. Let's turn to the next. The vestibules in front of the nave of the house, this is nave and this is a vestibule, was 20 cubits long. 20 cubits long, this way, okay, equal to the width of the house, and 10 cubits deep in front of the house. This is the 10 cubits. This is the 10 cubits. Okay? And made for the house window with recessed the frame. You see this recessed the frame here? This is what they're talking about. On top. Okay? He also built structure against the wall of the house, running around the wall of the house of both the nave and the inner sanctuary. This is the inner sanctuary. There he calls it, this is nave, and this is the inner sanctuary, which is the Holy of Holy place. And the made side a cherubim all around. You see this? This is a cherubim all around, everywhere. That's what he's talking about. And the door and the wall, everywhere is cherubim. That's what he's talking about. 20-story was the 5 cubits broad and middle, one with 6 cubits board, and the third was a 7 cubits broad. And around the outside the house he made an offset on the wall in order that the supporting beam should not be inserted into the wall of the house. So you see that on the outside there's 3 different rooms. There's one room here, another room here, another room here. Okay? Now, 7. When the house was built, it was with the stone prepared at the quarry, so neither hammer nor axes nor any tools of iron was heard in the house while it was being built. The entrance for the lowest story on the south side of the house. Okay, so this side is the east side. This is the east. This is the west. This is the south. This is the north. Okay? So remember, entrance is on what side? East side. And the Holy of Holy place is what side? On the west side. Just remember. And this is one of the things that I mentioned in the past. When you go to, when you look at the actually Israel, Jerusalem the picture, you see this wailing wall, right? You see this wailing wall where they're actually standing, and they to put their prayers on, and they, the people with the black, hat with the black, the coats, they actually bow down, they pray before that walls, and they put their hands on the walls and stuff, right? What is that wailing wall also called? That wailing wall, we call something else. Western Wall. You know why that Western Wall is? Because that wall is on the west side, which was only the wall that's still left on the west side, which is close to the Holy of a Holy Place. East, north, south was destroyed. Only the wall close to the Holy of a Holy is the only wall that left. So just remember, because this direction is always going to come up, the direction. East bound is a sinning direction. Holy direction is always the west side. We're going to, I mentioned this too many times, so, I'm sure many of you already remember. So coming back here, entrance for the lower story was on the south side of the house. So south side of the house is this side, right? So there's entrance coming in, right? And on went up by the stair in the middle story. So they're talking about this room. From the first to the middle to the third. So what you don't see here is there's a stairway, a spiral stairway here in the back that connects between each floor. One went up by stair in the middle story, which I mentioned, the stairway that I mentioned is to go up from one floor to another floor, right? And from the middle story of the third. So he built the house and finished it, and made the ceilings of the house of beam and plank of cedar. So they were talking about all the cedar, plank. They were talking about this particular one, right? Ceiling. He built the structure against the whole house, the 5 cubits high, and it was joined to the house with the timber of a cedar. So this is the 5 cubits high. All right. Now the word of the Lord came to Solomon concerning this. Okay, so we skipped that. Okay, so verse 15. He lined the wall of the house on the inside with board of a cedar from the floor to the house of the wall. So this is a cedar wood that are covered with gold. It's all cedar wood. He covered them on the inside with wood. He covered the floor of the house with a board of a cypress. So as I mentioned, behind is all, the cypress wood, and then a cover with gold. He built 20 cubits of the rear of the house with board of a cedar from the floor to the walls, and he built this within an inner sanctuary as the most holy place. As I mentioned, inner sanctuary and the most of a holy place, the holy of holy place, is exactly the same thing. All right. The house that is nave in the front of the inner sanctuary. So this is a nave. So this is nave, also called holy place. It was a 40 cubits long. I told you before, this is 20 cubits, right? And there's a 40 cubits, as I mentioned. So this length is 40 cubits. That's what he's talking about. The cedar within the house was carved in the form of a gourd and open flowers. So as you can see here, there's flowers all around the wall, right? That's what means. All was a cedar, no stone was a seen. So all inside is all wood and covered with gold. The inner sanctuary he prepared in the innermost part of the house, which is the holy of holy place again, to set there Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. So this is the Ark of the Covenant in the middle here. You see this in the middle here? This is the Ark of Covenant. The inner sanctuary was 20 cubits long and 20 cubits wide and 20 cubits high. So the height, width, and length, so all 20 cubits. So you can think of it as this is a cube, 20 cubit cube. So that's exactly like how it looks in a inner sanctuary. and overlaid it with pure gold. He also overlaid it an altar of a cedar. And Solomon overlaid it inside the house with the pure gold, and he drew a chain of gold across in front of the inner sanctuary and overlaid it with gold. So what he's talking about is all these things are covered with gold, is what he's talking about. And he overlaid the whole house with gold until all the house was finished, and the whole altar that belonged to the inner sanctuary he overlaid it with gold. He's talking about this, the altar. This is the altar of incense. Okay? In the inner sanctuary, as I mentioned, inner sanctuary is the holy of holy place. Oops. Inner place. Right here. Right, inner place. He made 2 cherubim of olive wood, each 10 cubits high. Okay. So this is the cherubim. So height of this cherubim is 10 cubits high. Okay? 10 cubits high. And there are 2 cherubim, one on the southbound, one on the northbound. 5 cubits was the length of one wing of the cherubim, and 5 cubits the length of the other wings of the cherubim. What it means is this cherubim is actually 5 cubits. This wing is another 5 cubits. This wing is a 5 cubits, and that is a 5 cubits. So that makes up 20 cubits. Okay? So 5, 5, 5, 5. That makes up 20 cubits, which means this wing touches this wall, that wing touches that wall, and these 2 wings are touching each other. That's what it says. We're going to read that. Verse 24. 5 cubits was the length of one wing of the cherub, and 5 cubits of the length of the other wings of the cherub. It was 10 cubits from the tip of the one wing to the tip of the other, which means tip of this cherub to the tip of the other wing is 10 cubits. From tip to tip, 10 cubits. This is of one cherub. And another 10 cubits of this wing to the other wing. So that makes up 10 cubits, which makes the total of 20 cubits. The other cherub also measured 10 cubits. Both cherubim had the same measure and the same form. The height of the one cherub was 10 cubits, and so was that of the other cherub. He put the cherubim in the innermost part of the house, and the wings of the cherubim were spread out, so that a wing of one touched the one wall, and a wing of the other cherub touched the other wall. Their other wings touched each other in the middle of the house, and overlaid the cherubim with the gold. Now it makes sense? Now you understand exactly what it looks like? Verse 29. Yeah, around all the walls of the house he carved, engraved a figure of a cherubim and palm trees and open flowers in the inner and outer room. So as you can see here, inner room, outer room is carved with cherubim, palm tree, and what? Open trees. The floor of the house was overlaid with gold in the inner and outer room. So the floor is all gold from here and here, both. For the entrance to the inner sanctuary, he made a door of olive wood and lintel, and the doorpost was 5-sided, which means, so remember this is 20 cubits. So this door, right, should be, this is 5 cubits. This door, and folding door, it's folded in and out. Okay? He covered a 2-door of olive wood, a carving and cherubim and palm tree and open flower. He overlaid them with the gold and spread gold on the cherubim and on the palm tree. So what he's saying is, it's the same as the wall. It's got the palm tree, cherubim, and open trees carved on the door. So also he made for the entrance to the nave doorpost of olive wood. Now he's talking about this door. Now we talked about the inner door, and this is the outer door, and exactly same thing. It's a folding door, right? He's got the palm tree, and it's got the cherubim, and it's got the open tree as well. So verse 33 and on. So also he made for the entrance to the nave doorpost of olive wood in the form of a square, and 2 door of a cypress wood. The 2 leaves of the one door were folding, and 2 leaves of the other door were folding. So what he's talking about is just this is a folding door, right? On them he carved the cherubim and palm trees and open flowers, and he overlaid them with the gold evenly applied on the carved work. He built an inner court with 3 courses of cut stones and 1 course of a cedar beam. So he's talking about the outer side of it. So there's a stones outside of it right here. Now, when you look at the picture, does it really make sense? Now you can actually understand exactly what this is talking about just by looking at this. If you look at this picture, and as I explained to you, which takes about like 10 minutes to explain to you, and you can see exactly what the sanctuary looks like, right? But if you just read it by yourself with this particular chapter, you have no idea what you're reading. And then you're just going to skip this chapter because it's so boring and it makes no sense. So you're just going to like, oh, yeah. So, but at least you can see what it looks like, right? So then, here's the question. Who designed this? Yes. This is what Lord told him to build. This is not something neither David or Solomon designed this. This is what God designed it. Same as the tabernacle. Okay? Now, I'm going to go over all I'm not going to go over all this because, it's just it's too much time to explain what tabernacle is about. But I'm going to talk about few things in this tabernacle. I mean, not tabernacle. The sanctuary. What is the difference between this temple versus tabernacle? Tabernacle is actually the tent that they carried in the desert when Moses was traveling from, when they came out of Egypt and until they actually came into the promised land, they carried this tabernacle all the time. And what is the difference between the tabernacle and this? So I'm going to show you. Yeah, go ahead. So we're going to take a look at what's the difference between tabernacles and let me see if I can find a better. Okay, this one's a little better. Oops. So this is what the tabernacle looks like. Okay? So this is the Holy of Holy Place, and this is the Holy Place. And this is the east, and this is the west. Okay? Now, what we saw was the folding door that separates from the nave, which is the holy place, to the Holy of Holy Place. And there is Ark of Covenant, and there is no cherubim on the side like the one we see in the temple. But what we see is the cherubim is on the top of the Ark of Covenant. This is the cherubim. Okay? So there's no cherubim that touches the wing between this wall to this wall. But let me give you the size of this. The Holy of Holy Place in Tabernacle is 10 cubits, 10 cubits, and 10 cubits. Holy of Holy Place is cube as well, but it's size of 10. So this is the 10 cubits, and from here, from this veil to the entrance of the holy place is 20 cubits. And this is 10 cubits, and the height is 10 cubits. So there's a 20 cubits and 10 cubits. So that makes up total of 30 cubits. From here, the holy place to the holy of holy place to the holy place. What's the difference between from this tabernacle to the temple that we just saw? Size. How different is it? That was a 60 cubits. What is the size of the innermost, which is the holy of holy place? The temple, what's the size? There was a 20 cubits. And holy place was 40 cubits. Tabernacle, this is 10 cubits, and this is 20 cubits. So, which means exactly doubled. Right? Tabernacle was a 10 cubits here, and now temple in 20 cubits. And holy place, this is 20 cubits, and in temple they're 40 cubits. So exactly double. Height, this is 10 cubits in tabernacle, but their height in temple is 20 cubits. And as I mentioned, this holy of holy place is 10 cubits cube. In temple, 20 cube. So exactly doubled. But all the components are the same. We have Ark of Covenant, we have altar of incense, we have showbread table, we got lamp. Everything is in there, but it's just doubled. So, here's the question. If this was also designed by God, this is not something Moses designed, this is what God told Moses to build. Same goes with the temple, but he doubled it. Why did he double it? Okay, now, let's think about it. Tabernacle was there in a desert, and temple was built in the Jerusalem. So they no longer move around. Tabernacle had to be moved around. Temple does not move. It's the building. You don't move. Right? And it doubled it. But even with the double, what happened to that temple? Even with that size, what happened to the temple? The Solomon temple that he built, what happened to that temple? It was destroyed by the Babylonian, right? So they rebuilt it. Who rebuilt it? Who rebuilt the temple? Exactly. After they came back from Babylon, they rebuilt the temple. Do you know who built it? Well, this is too hard question, right? All right, so we're gonna take a look at it then. Let's see. Where is this? No. So let's go to Ezra. Ezra. Ezra chapter 3. We're going to read from verse 8. Now in the 2nd year after their coming to the house of God at Jerusalem, in the 2nd month, Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel and Jeshua the son of Zozadak made a beginning together with the rest of their kinsmen, the priests and the Levites, and all who had come to Jerusalem from the captivity. They appointed the Levites from 20 years old and upward to supervise the work of the house of the Lord. Who built the house? Who built the temple? Yeah, but who is the man? Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel is the one who actually rebuilt the 2nd temple. And Jeshua was the priest. Jeshua was the priest. Why? Jeshua? That's correct. That's a Jesus as well. Yeah. Zerubbabel was the person who rebuilt the temple after Solomon. Solomon's temple was completely destroyed by the Babylonians, and they rebuilt the temple. Was built by the Zerubbabels. That was a 2nd temple. And was there a 3rd temple? Was the Zerubbabel temple destroyed? Yes? No? Was there a 3rd temple? No, there's no 3rd temple. What about the Herod's temple? What is Herod's temple? Okay. Herod's temple is expansion from the Zerubbabel's temple. So what Herod did was he expanded the Zerubbabel's temple and built it bigger and nicer. So the western wall that we see, that we talked about, is the wall that was expanded by the Herod. That's the wall that we see. But that was the expansion of the 2nd temple, which is the Zerubbabel's temple. So there is no 3rd temple. There was a 2nd temple. That temple was also destroyed. Only thing that we know is just the western wall. That's all we know. Everything else was completely destroyed, right? So, going back to the question, why did God actually expand it to twice? Why did he make it bigger? Does the bigger temple draws more people? But think about it. Who goes into the temple? Only priests to go in. No other people go into the temple. People can go into the court, right? But people cannot go into the temple. No one is allowed to get into the holy place, not to mention of the holy of holy place. This coming Monday is what? Yom Kippur. What is Yom Kippur? That's the Day of Atonement. That's the Day of Atonement. We've been hearing about Yom Kippur for all this time. That's the Day of Atonement. All right? What happens in the Day of Atonement? The Day of Atonement is a very special day. I'm not talking about today. In old days, in the Day of Atonement, what happens on that day? Well, you have to really learn the tabernacle in order for you to understand. So let me just explain this. Remember I showed you this holy place? and the Holy of Holy place. What was in the Holy of Holy place? Ark of Covenant. That's it. Did you see any lights? Did you see any window? There's no window. There's no light, and it's covered in tabernacle. There's a veil that covers between the holy place and the Holy of Holy place, right? And then imagine when you walk into that room. Is it bright? There's no light. Absolutely, there's no light. You can't see anything there. Why? This is where the tabernacle is, but that place is complete dark. Who goes in there? Obviously, Aaron got in there, but after Aaron died, who goes in there? Okay. Since you haven't really learned the tabernacle, you probably don't know. There's only one person could go in there. Only one person. That is, high priest of that year could go in. Just one person. When did they go in? A Day of Atonement. That's the only day allowed the high priest of that year could go in. That one day. Rest of the year, no one gets in there. And even with the high priest of that year cannot go in without just walking in. You have to actually have incense to be burned, and there's like complete smokes. And then you need to bring the blood of the slaughtered lamb. You need to bring that blood into the room. If you don't, you actually have the rope tied into the high priest, the ankles. Because if you go in there and if you die because you're not prepared, since no one can get in, they have to pull that dead priest with the rope because no one can get in there. If you go in there, you're gonna die. That's what happened. So only the Day of Atonement, high priest of that year can go in. That's it. So the Yom Kippur is a very special day because that's the day that only one day the high priest could walk into the Holy of Holy place. Okay? Imagine, when you go in, is it bright? Nothing there. First of all, it's dark. Second, there's a complete cloud, right? Because of the smoke, you can't see anything. Once again, going back here, that Holy of Holy place is just one day a year that only the high priest of that year can go in, and that's it. Do you really need to make this room special? If you go in there once in a year, only one person? No. And Holy of Holy place, there are priests to go in, right? Priest and high priest to go into the the holy place, but not in the Holy of Holy place. So only day that God forgives the priest the sins as well as all Israelite sins, that Day of Atonement, which is the Yom Kippur, is a special day for everyone. This is why everybody takes a day off, because it's so special day. But God made it twice as big, but you know what? Making a bigger sanctuary doesn't do anything. It doesn't bring more people. It doesn't bring more sinners into it. Making a temple bigger does not do anything. Imagine, why did God give the tabernacles to Israelites? What is the main purpose of giving this tabernacle? Many people think the tabernacle is for God. No. Tabernacle is not for God. It's for the sinner. God wants to forgive the Israelites' sins. That's the purpose of God gave that tabernacle, so that you can come to me. With the sins, you could never come to me, but forgiving your sins, now I'm opening a door for you to come to me. So the tabernacle was given for the Israelites to forgive their sin, not for God. So God made it twice as big to forgive people. But does that mean the people actually came more and asked for forgiveness? No, it didn't do it. Even if God actually opened it as twice as big, people did not come. People did not come. Instead, they rebel against God. They're more corrupt, right? They sin more. The more God opened up his heart, more people flee away from the Lord. Making the church bigger, does it bring more people to church? If you go to bigger church, well, obviously more people's going to sit in there, right? But does it really bring more people close to the Lord? No. There may be a lot of people sitting there, but that doesn't bring people close to the Lord. God's heart is to bring more people and forgive them, and so that can bring people close to the Lord. But unfortunately, that's not how it works. You have to remember, we're going to continue to actually go over the tabernacle and then, continue on from here. But here's the one things you have to remember. Remember I told you that if statement. You're going to continue here that if. You know why God put that word if? We know what happened. Did Solomon follow that if statement? Nope. He failed. Right? He absolutely failed. What about the king after Solomon? They all failed. That's why Israel was destroyed, and that's why the Judah was destroyed, because no one truly followed it. What does that tell you? Not just the orphan. The Bible is teaching us everyone's going to fail. Everyone's going to fail. Follow me. Keep my commandment. Do this, do that. Let's see if you can follow. And everyone tried, and everyone failed. Here's the teaching. You will fail. That's why Jesus has to come. Because you can't do it. No one can do it. That's why the Romans says, there is no righteous. No one. No one in this world. No one can be righteous. That's why Jesus had to come and forgive your sins. That's the only way that all of us can be saved. If I try to do it, if I try to follow the Lord's command, you will fail. So here's the teaching, which is what you have to remember all the time. If you try to do it by yourself or anything you do, you will fail. And you're going to be disappointed. Here's the thing. You want to forgive someone. Does it work? It doesn't work. How about this? You want to love someone that you don't love. Does that work well? No. You try to control your own mind. Does it work? Can you trust yourself? So what can you do? So here's the thing. This is why Bible is teaching us. You cannot do it by yourself. This is why Jesus had to come. This was the Solomon's Psalm 127. Even if you build a house, doesn't work. Even if you keep even if you watch over the tower all night, means nothing. If God does not build the house, if God does not watch over the towel, nothing. So remember, don't try to do it by yourself. This is why you need to pray. Lord, there's nothing I can do. But you promise I can do everything through the ones who gives me the strength. I can do everything, not by my power, but the power of the Lord. If you stop, said, I can't do anything, then you have a problem. Yes, absolutely correct. We cannot do everything, but that's not the end. I cannot do anything, but I can do everything because you give me the power to do so. Through you, I can do everything. That's the end. All right? Yeah. So, remember, don't try to do it by yourself. If you try to forgive someone, if you try to work out with something, even though you may say, I forgive you, even though you may say, I love you, even though you say this and that, deep inside of your heart, you know it's not working. It's not working. So this is when you pray to the Lord. I cannot forgive. I cannot be patient. I cannot be actually loving anyone. I cannot be kind to other people. I cannot do anything. But Lord, because you're living in me, overflow me, control me, overpower me, so that I can love, that I can forgive, that I can do everything through your power. If you pray, I guarantee you, you will be strengthened. You'll be able to do so. Okay? That's the teachings. All right. So we're going to continue to learn about the tabernacles and the temples and so forth. And, it makes it a little bit difficult for you to follow through because I don't think... yeah. I know Yunsu went through that, but I don't know whether she was there all the time. But most of you didn't go through the tabernacle. So if you have a chance, please just study some tabernacle. I'll give you all the informations, recordings, and everything you need. And I want you to just listen to those tabernacle. It will help you a lot. Okay? All right. Any questions about the things that we covered today? Chapter 3? Sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Discernment. Mm-hmm. Okay, so two things. Okay, the Chinese version of the Bible talks about Yasser wisdom, right? So, have you ever read the Proverbs? Have you ever read the Proverbs? A little bit? Okay, so before you turn to a Proverbs, I'm going to ask this question. What is wisdom? What is wisdom? To know? So knowing versus wise, is that the same thing? So what is the wisdom? if no if no one asks questions, you know it, but if someone asks questions, you can't answer. Okay, so many people read the Proverbs to gain the wisdom from the Bible, doesn't it? It's the Proverbs is called to be the book of wisdom, right? Then people trying to get the wisdom, but what is the wisdom? So let me actually introduce you what wisdom is. This is not actually the teachings of today, but we're gonna just take I'll show you something. So let's turn to Proverbs. Let's turn to chapter 8. Proverbs chapter 8. Ready? All right. I'm going to read. Does not wisdom call? Does not understanding raise her voice? On the heights besides the way, at the crossroad she takes her stand, besides the gates in front of the town. At the entrance of the portal she cries aloud. To you, O man, I call, and my cry is to the children of man. O simple ones, learn prudence. O fools, learn sense. Hear, for I will speak noble things, and from my lips will come what is right. For my mouth will utter truth. Wickedness is an abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are righteous. There is nothing twisted or crooked in them. They're all straight to him, which understands and right to those who find knowledge. Take my instruction instead of silvers, and a knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is better than jewels, and all that you may desire cannot compare with her. I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, and I find knowledge and discretion. The fear of the Lord is hatred of evil, pride and arrogance, and the way of evil and perverted speech I hate. I have a counsel and sound wisdom. I have insight. I have a strength. By me king reigns, and rulers decree what is just. By me prince rules and noble, all who govern justly. I love those who love me, and those who seek me diligently find me. Riches and honor are with me, enduring wealth and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, even fine gold, and my yield than choice silver. I walk in the way of righteousness in the path of justice, gaining an inheritance to those who love me, and filling their treasuries. The Lord possesses me at the beginning of the work, and the work at the first of his acts of old. Age ago I was set up at the first, before the beginning of the earth. When there was no death, I was brought forth. When there were no spring abounding with water, before the mountains had been shaped, before the hills I was brought forth, before he had made the earth with its field, or the first of the dust of the earth. When he established the heaven, I was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep, when he made firm the skies above, when he established the fountains of the deep, when he assigns to the sea its limits, so that the water might not transgress his command. When he marked out the foundation of the earth, I was beside him like a master workman, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing before him always, rejoicing in his inhabited word, and delighting in the children of man. And now, O son, listen to me. Blessed are those who keep my ways, hear instructions, and be wise, and do not neglect it. Blessed is the one who listens to me, watching daily at my gates, waiting beside my door. For whoever finds me finds life, and obtains favor from the Lord. But he who fails to find me injures himself, and all who hates me love death. Now, I'm going to ask a question. Who is this? No. You're missing a lot of things here. Let's go back to the first. This is why I just read it. See if you actually catch this. Okay? Let's go back again. Does not wisdom call? Who's calling? Wisdom is calling. How can wisdom call? Is it a living thing? Is the wisdom living thing? How could wisdom call? Continue on. Does not understanding raise her voice? Understanding is raising voice? Is it understanding is a living thing? No, it's not. Let's continue on. On the heights beside the way, at the crossroads she takes her stand. So who is she? Wisdom and understanding. So now, wisdom and understanding is called to be she. Okay? It's like a living being, as a person. Okay? Continue on. Besides the gate in front of the town, at the entrance of the portal, she cries aloud, "To you, O men, I call." Who's I? Who's I here? Wisdom. And my cry is to the children of man. O simple ones, learn prudence. O fool, learn sense. Hear, for I will speak noble things. Who's a speaking? Wisdom is a speaking. How is the wisdom speaking? Continue on. And from my lips will come what is right. From my mouth will utter truth. Wickedness is an abomination to my lips. And all the word of my mouth are righteous. There is nothing twisted and crooked in them. They are all straight to him who understands, and right to those who find knowledge. To my instruction instead of a silver, and knowledge rather than a choice of gold. For wisdom is better than jewels, and all that you may desire cannot compare it with her. I, wisdom. You see this? Wisdom is talking. Dwell with prudence. I find knowledge and discretions. The fear of the Lord is a hatred of evil. Pride and arrogance and the way of evil and perverted speech I hate. I have a counsel and sound wisdom. I have insight. I have a strength. By me kings reign and rulers decree what is just. By me prince rules and noble all who governs justly. I love those who love me, and those who seek me diligently find me. Who is he talking about? Who is this? Is Jesus. Is Jesus. I'll continue on. We'll continue to read. All right? I love those who love me, and those who seek me diligently find me. Riches and honor are with me, enduring wealth and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, and even fine gold, and my yield than choice silver. I walked in the ways of righteousness and path of justice, granting an inheritance to those who love me, and filling their treasuries. The Lord possesses me at the beginning of his work, the first of his act of old. Age ago I was set up at the first before the beginning of the earth. Who is this? This is Jesus. This entire book is about wisdom. Wisdom is talking. That wisdom is Jesus. Are you trying to get the wisdom from this book? Yes, you will. What is that? That's Jesus. Wisdom is Jesus. There is two different wisdom. The wisdom coming from the Lord and wisdom coming from this world. Okay? There's two different kind of wisdom. There is the wisdom that comes from this world is this. Now I want you to turn to 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians. We're going to read from verse 18. For the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who is being saved it is power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning I will thwart. Where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made a foolish of the wisdom of the world? For since it is wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom. It pleases God through the folly of what we preach to save those who believe. For Jews demand signs and Greeks seek wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and folly to Gentiles. But to those who are called, both the Jews and Greeks, the Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. What is it? What is it? Wisdom is the Christ. Okay? Continue on. First Corinthians chapter 1, verse 24, actually. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 24. That's okay. So I'm going to continue on. For the foolishness of God is wiser than a man, and the wickedness of God is stronger than men. For consider your calling, brothers. Not many of you were wise according to worldly standard. Not many were powerful. Not many were of noble birth. But God chose what is foolish in the word of shame, the wise. God chose what is weak in the world of shame, the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, even things that is not, to bring to nothing things that are, so that no human being might boast in the presence of God. And because of him, you are in Christ Jesus, who became to us wisdom from God, righteousness and sanctifications and redemption, so that, as it is written, let the one who boasts boast in the Lord. So, there's two different kinds of wisdom. The wisdom that's coming from this world. The wisdom from God is Jesus. So what are you learning from the Proverbs? Many of the people trying to gain wisdom from this world, you're not going to get it, because that proverb is not about the wisdom of this world. Rather, that Proverbs teach you who Jesus is. If you try to look for Jesus in the Proverbs, you will find him, just like what we just read. So then going back, the question Daisy asked. He asked for wisdom. He asked for discernment of right and wrong, or the rights or evil. It's like going back to the time before, a fall of Adam. He wanted to know. He did not want to measure things based on his own righteousness. So he asked for, give me the wisdom so that I can determine what's good and what's evil. When Jesus is in us, we can determine what's good and evil. When you try to judge things based on your own righteousness, on your own wisdom, you will fail. That's exactly what Solomon did. He relied on his own wisdom, and that's where he failed. He started off with God's wisdom, but he ended with his own wisdom, and he failed. Does that answer your question, Daisy? Yeah.